The meeting is now live.
I would like to call this Monday. What is the date today? November 1st. How could I forget November the 1st? The Monday, November the 1st special meeting of Kimberley City Council to order here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Do we have any late items, Maurice?
There's no late item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, we have two items on the agenda at this special meeting tonight. First up is the time and cost estimates for development cost charges for a development cost charge bylaw. And then secondly is the 22 to 26 capital and non-capital project plan. So we're in for a fairly full evening, even though we only have a couple of items. So let's get right at it. First up, as I mentioned, is time and cost estimates for DCC bylaw. And the motion on the table is that council receive the report dated November the 1st from the Chief Administrative Officer. Councillor Goodwin moves. Councillor McBain seconds. Discussion. Scott, can we just have kind of a summary and then we'll open it up for questions?
Many months ago, council asked for a cost estimate and time estimate on the implementation of a development cost charge bylaw. My apologies, it did take a while to get some solid answers together. And I want to just thank Councillor Goodwin for giving me some ideas to amend the report based on the feedback received on our UBCM resolution regarding the international school. I will leave that to council to decide at this point. I do mention in the report that in order to implement development cost charges, you need to have a long list of growth-related capital infrastructure required to handle that growth. And to date, I haven't heard too many ideas on growth-related capital yet. And obviously the cost and time is fairly daunting. It would take a while to recoup those costs. And obviously some time to put that bylaw together. So I'll set that up for council to discuss.
Well, there certainly was lots of reading in the attachment. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the report, Scott, that this sort of came up around the early development of the Purcell International School. And the fact that we have learned from the government that they're not willing to change the laws to let us tax them with property taxes means that it would have been a nice way to do it, but because it's going to take 5 to 7 months to get it in place, I don't think we could apply it anyway to the Purcell, even if we put it all together. But it wasn't exclusively about Purcell, I don't think. And the one area that I could see that this might be useful is if there's ever any development in the Taylor Mill development and we have to run infrastructure all the way out to that knoll and water lines and highways and all of that. So there is an argument that we should still pursue it. I think that it would be simpler just to do a boundary retraction, and I will come back in February and talk to Scott about that idea and basically exclude that whole area from the city so we don't have to deal with it and worry about it in the future, because it will be a very expensive proposition to extend services out there. So I guess I'm not seeing a huge need for a DCC bylaw at this point. I do think we did send a resolution to the government via the UBCM to change the laws around Group 4 schools to allow us to apply property taxes to them, or to reimburse us for the extra costs that we cannot collect taxes to cover. They have told us, the government has told us they will not change the law. So I think we should write them a letter and assume that they are therefore choosing option B, which is to provide us with funds in lieu of taxes to help cover the costs of any additional costs from Purcell Collegiate. We would have to figure out what those are to do that.
Councillor Oakley.
So I just wanted to get clarity, for me and maybe other members of council, on the costs associated with the development. For example, and I'd like to ask maybe Scott, if you could maybe use the new subdivision in Forest Crown as an example. Like, currently do the taxpayers pay for all the infrastructure that goes into a new development?
No, the developments.
Okay, so
That's our system.
so we're talking water, sewer, storm, pavement, they pay for that. And then they hook up to the city, wherever the city line is.
The type of development, such as that, a larger development like that, they pay for all the linear assets, which is pipes in the ground, roads, sidewalks, streetlights, all of it. It's sort of the downstream infrastructure. Like if we had to build a wastewater treatment plant for an extra 5,000 people, that's the sort of thing a development cost charge would cover. I don't know, Jim, do you have any other? A new well, if Kimberly was on wells, and we had to drill a well because of a new development, that's the sort of thing that's triggered by population growth.
Yeah, or even smaller projects, like if we had to upsize some downstream pipe, for example, or improve an intersection to account for increased traffic flow to a new subdivision.
Right.
So offsite or downstream infrastructure is what DCC's covering.
So if I could just finish.
Go ahead.
Part A of my question. So part B is, when it comes to DCCs then, is there another way of looking at this? So for example, if Purcell Collegiate gets built out and they hook onto city sewer and water and storm lines and all that stuff, and they come to where our lines are, and they have 500 students there or whatever, is there a different way of looking at this to, is there a way to have water, for example? Let's just talk about water for, they're going to go through a lot of water out of our is there a way to, change things so you can charge, because they're not paying taxes, can you charge them water use? Is there a way of looking at this without development cost charges? That's what I'm kind of going.
Yeah, we charge user fees for water and sewer. So, currently it's per fixture.
Yeah.
So every toilet that's in a new development, every sink, there's a set fee for. In a dormitory-like setting where there's shared washrooms, there's probably higher than usual water usage, but we may be able to deal with that in the user fee bylaw.
Because water could be an issue, and for anybody. I'm not just talking about Purcell. So I was just trying to get my head wrapped around how to look at this a little bit differently.
Yeah, so with respect to the paid for infrastructure, the best example we have right now is Forest Crown, phase 6, the 22 lots that are going in up there. The responsibility for all of that pipes in the ground and infrastructure is the responsibility of TAI, and they're paying for that. And then they will hook up to kind of the city trunk, but it's the developer that pays for all of that. Go ahead, Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, sewer and water have never been a real concern with Purcell because we can charge whatever rates are necessary to remove that. It's the downstream and offsite costs that may do it. Another example would be if we had enough growth up around the ski hill that we have to put a satellite sewer treatment plant up there. That may be something that we would want to recover from DCCs, or if we had to build a major trunk road into the north half of Forest Crown, if they ever expand north. Don't know. Or if the build gets so big that, as Jim said, if some of the downstream sewer lines just aren't big enough, but they're offsite and far away, that could be covered.
So unless I missed it in maybe a clarification in the document that you had attached, you can't be singular with DCCs. In other words, you can't apply it to a particular project. DCCs are applied to all development. It includes residential, light industrial, recreational. I think I read that.
Yeah, you would set different rates, like typically residential, it's per unit. You could set, for example, different rates per unit based on the size of the lot, which should correspond with the size of the home. Commercial, industrial, it's typically on a per meter basis, so it's all calculated based on, you know, what type of use it is and how it's going to impact the community through growth.
But it is going to be applied to all of the development, not just a selected piece of it. And so part of the consideration, I think the one thing that jumped out for me, 1 second, Councilor Dell, I'm sorry, I should have gone to you first. That jumped out for me in the document was that DCCs are only one tool that you have for dealing with all of these types of and aspects of growth. We have latecomer agreements, we have parcel taxes, we have all kinds of tools that we can use, and the tool to be used should be specific to what it is the goal is that we're trying to accomplish. I have nothing against DCCs in principle, but if you take a look at kind of where the communities that apply them, it's mostly the larger communities that have large numbers of development that goes on in the course of a year. Ours is relatively small, and I worry about the impact that extra cost is going to have on, say, a multi-unit residential. We're already having difficulty with affordability, and adding DCCs to that is just going to up the cost of the housing units. And I think it's a point in time thing, but I think we have to be very cautious of how, which tools we apply, for which instances. And I guess my last comment, I think it's important for us to remember that Purcell International Education actually pay taxes. Their tax bill this year was just under $41,000, which makes them in the top 5 or 6 taxpayers in Kimberley. Councillor Dallin.
So I started to get a little bit twitchy about getting my hand up there because I was remembering part of this where you can zone the DCC. So you can have different zones of town to encourage
Sectors, they call
right, different sectors and, having density pieces. My biggest concern with the DCC thing is the ongoing maintenance and staff time. I think that that's probably the largest hurdle that I really see. I think it's got some excellent potential in things such as the wastewater treatment plant. But at this time, maybe something like offsite levies would be better suited. There are so many tools that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges with DCCs is it's a long-term tool. Like, we're not going to put DCCs in place this year to undertake projects that are 3 or 4 years down the road. It's, they're typically 20-year time frame, and you need time to collect enough money. That's for the DCC bylaw to build that. That's one of the biggest challenges, is just the collecting the amount of DCCs by the time you need to build the asset.
Scott.
I think as well, we're focused on Purcell, which I think brought this to the table, but in our official community plan, it is mentioned twice that council would consider the implementation, and that's what we're doing here tonight.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess, I don't know if I can make a suggestion, given that none of these, the DCCs is not an exclusive tool or is not mutually exclusive to the other tools. I think it's a good thing to have this conversation at budget time every year. And we can take a look at what the environment looks like, what is it we're dealing with? And more importantly, with respect to the OCP, what is the long-term planning that's being put in place, as Jim says, beyond just the 5 years? I mean, we're only dealing with a 5-year time frame with the budget that that we're dealing with. So I think it'd be prudent to come back and have this conversation on a regular basis to figure out when and if. Councillor Dallum and then Councillor McBain.
So just a quick question. I think that in the report it says that DCCs are tied to the OCP, and the OCP we're on a 5-year renewal. So we're at kind of a 5-year plan. So that's the limit of our DCC forward looking. Is that kind of correct? Or because it had mentioned 10-year OCPs and 10-year DCC planning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So best case scenario, you're redoing your OCP every 5 years.
Right.
I can tell you communities our size don't do that. It took us more than 5 years to complete our OCP. So I think what you want to refer to is a long-term capital plan, you know, what projects are on the 10 to 20-year horizon related to growth that the DCCs could help pay for. And I think at this point, I have a hard time coming up with growth-related projects on that horizon.
Just further, if I may.
Further, go ahead.
Would that apply to things like the Marston Street Bridge or a reservoir? Or are they kind of too parallel to?
Well, the bridge is maintenance related.
Right.
Not growth related. So we're not replacing it because there's more and more traffic on it. It's not being made wider, like 4-lane bridge or something to that effect. I think if the reservoir needed, you know, if the dam needed to be taller, if there was a project related to water supply,
Okay.
it's possible.
Thank you.
I think it would be hard to justify that today with the information we have.
Councillor McBain, then we'll move on.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, kind of tacking on to what the mayor said, you know, it is good having this discussion and having, you know, if the DCC comes up as an option every year, to discuss, and if whatever we do with it, it's fine. But it would be nice to know, like, everybody's kind of talking, well, we have other options and stuff. Maybe it would be nice to have, you know, each time we go through this exercise, to have some other things kind of lined up too that maybe we could review. It would just be helpful. Yeah, that's all. So
I think we have that. I mean, Jim brought the
I'm not saying we haven't.
concept of the parcel tax.
Yeah.
We've got the user fees, local area improvement taxes, if your neighborhood needs it.
Yeah.
There's an array of tools. Some we're already using. I think it's important for council to maybe know the tools we aren't using, and are the tools we're currently using fitting our needs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you for that. All right, we'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. So second item tonight is on spending money. We have our capital and non-capital projects. It's a pretty extensive report. Jim, take it away, please.
Yeah, it's a bit of a novel. My apologies for that. I hope everybody was able to get through it on the weekend. Before we get too deep into this, I just have a little cleanup to do on the resolutions that I've got proposed there. It's one resolution. The third part of it there, just want to clean that up a little bit. So where it says, talks about the 21 to 25 5-year financial plan, should be bylaw number 2688. So that just needs to be inserted. Maurice, if you could please make note of that. And the second sentence from the end of that resolution where it talks about to include the capital expenditures detailed in years 2 through 4. If you could change that to 1 through 4, so that we're dealing with the 2022 to 2025 projects to be amended in years 2 through 5 of the existing plan. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jim. So I'll tell you what, let's put the first motion on the table, which is the receipt of the report, and then we'll deal with the other two as we go through. Councillor McBain moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just going to jump right into the document here, and I'm obviously not going to go through every page of this thing. The real intention of this, I mean, it is to get the list of projects in front of council, but there's a lot of narrative in there on the projects in 2022 in particular. And I'd like the council to use this as a bit of a reference document as you go throughout the year. There's projects you're getting questions from citizens, that kind of thing. You can always flip back to this, and there's not a ton of detail on the projects, but there's a brief summary of, there's a description, justification, and the funding, how we're going to pay for those projects. So before I jump into it, I just want to make council aware. I think you've probably seen on the screen there, but we've got the operations team with us tonight, which is great. If there's any questions specific to any of the projects in here, I'm going to defer to the experts. These are the guys making the request to include the projects in the plan, and they're the ones that know all the details on them. So Yeah, thanks and welcome. So that's Chris, Rob, Nick and Nicole, and I think Fire Chief Rick is on the line here as well. So if you do have any questions for those folks, then I'll give them an opportunity as we go through the presentation here to speak as well. So just skipping forward to page 2, the introduction document. So the purpose of this plan really is to present council with information on the projects proposed to be undertaken over the next 5 years. To help council make informed decisions on which projects warrant approval in the 2022 to 26 5-year financial plan bylaw. So the starting point for the preparation of that bylaw is years 2 through 5 of the current 5-year financial plan. So ideally, what we want to do is, we really should just be doing minor tweaks to the final 4 years of the plan, adding a 5th year on for the new 5-year financial plan every year. But we're not quite to that point. As you probably read reading through the document here, there was quite a few changes. I think for those 4 years, we added roughly 41 new projects, another $4.8 million. We increased the budgets on some of the previously approved project budgets by about $2.6 million. There's lots of reasons for that. I've tried to explain them in the project description sheets, but yeah, we're really, and I think next year is going to be better, but we're working on getting this thing dialed in where the operations department has the projects in that they want from year to year, and just have to do some minor tweaks to update costs and rejig the projects a little bit rather than these kind of wholesale changes that we're seeing with some of this stuff.
So in fairness, Jim, it's a pretty dynamic environment that we're working in these days.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about project needs or costs. So, I think council fully understands the need for flexibility.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. You're quite right. I mean, this was a special year from a cost perspective in particular. So this document includes some high-level summary documents following this introduction. And then it gets into project description or a detail page for each of the capital projects proposed in 2022. And then we've also got listings of 5 years for the non-capital projects, the smaller stuff that doesn't result in the addition of an asset to the balance sheet. So smaller equipment purchases, repair, maintenance type of work. I've just got a note in there that the plan was prepared with the best information that was available at the time of the writing of this document. So we'll be adopting the 5-year financial plan bylaw leading up to the deadline for that statutory deadline of May 15th, 2022. So there's likely going to be a few more changes that are going to come about in between now and then. So just realizing that this won't be the last time the council sees this capital stuff. We'll be talking about it again.
That sounds like a disclaimer.
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, I'm quite confident with the information and the numbers that are in here, but when we get to year end, there may be some projects that aren't quite finished that we need to carry forward. Could be some new grant opportunities that come up that we apply for that are going to result in changes to the plan as well. So I'll just flip to the next page 3 of the document here, which is a summary by fund between the general water and sewer funds for the 5 years. So it's fairly aggressive. There's a lot in there. There's almost $100 million worth of projects that we're proposing to complete over those 5 years. You have to keep in mind that about 72 or 73 million of that is they're grant dependent projects. So if we don't get those grants, those projects may need to be changed, canceled, deferred. Of course, the largest piece of that $73 million is the $62.57 million new wastewater treatment plant that's proposed for construction in 2024 and 2025. So, but even absent of that, if we don't get any of those grants, we're still completing just about $27 million worth of capital for 5 years. So there's lots going on, lots of big projects. So the next page there, page 4, the listing of significant projects, is really meant as a bit of a snapshot. So you can see all 5 years at once. This is not an all-inclusive list as noted. It's everything $300,000 and up, just to give you an idea of what's on the docket. There's a bunch of bunch of big stuff in there. Again, the wastewater treatment plant is the biggest. As you look through this, with the exception of some bigger projects for the Civic Center, some new facilities proposed, like the bays for the fire truck, a wash bay construction in 2024. There's not a whole lot in here for facilities, not big stuff anyways. And what the manager of parks and facilities is proposing, Nicole, in the non-capital project list, she's got $25,000 in there in each year to undertake building condition assessments on our various and assorted facilities. I think we insure $100 million worth of facilities. So we've got a lot of buildings out there, a lot of older buildings. And what we're missing right now is like the pavement condition assessment we had, for example, done this year to tell us what condition our roads were in and when we need to start doing maintenance on it. We don't have that for our buildings right now. So that's what Nicole is proposing, is we get consultants in, and every year we pick off the bigger, higher priority facilities and just kind of work our way down the list. And that's going to provide us with, priority projects that we need to start undertaking. It'll provide us with budgets. So that'll be one of the things you'll see changing in the upcoming 5-year plans. You're going to see more facility projects starting to get worked in here. And that may result in some of the other projects getting bumped because we can't afford to do anything. But I think that's going to be a really important piece to have that information.
Good.
Yeah.
Couple of questions. Center 64, the roof and truss repairs. So it says here it's grant dependent. I thought I'm getting a bit of a deja vu on a conversation we had surrounding that building. This was quite a while ago now, but I thought that we had the green light to go ahead and complete that project.
Yeah, we do. The reason it says grant dependent, there's still an outstanding grant application. It was submitted, I think, October 2020 comes to mind, but we're anticipating, we haven't received any final word on that yet. We're anticipating that may come through.
Okay, and if it comes through, great, but what if it doesn't?
I think if it doesn't, the plan is we're going to have another look at that, come back to council and ask for alternate funding to get that done.
Right, okay.
It's a priority project. We know what has to happen. So some of these bigger projects, we've applied for grant funding a couple of times and haven't received it. So yeah, if we don't get that one, we'll come back to council.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Also and I guess maybe Nick is probably the best person to ask about this. You've got Swan Hill scheduled for 2023. We did 3/4 of that hill this year, or 3/4 of the hill was done. And I'm just curious as to kind of why that wasn't completed, because it is such a small piece yet that's in pretty bad shape. And then secondly, why 2023 instead of not next year? Like, why would we wait a year plus to finish that off?
You on the line, Nick? Or maybe Chris in his absence?
Yeah, Nick, are you on the line?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Apologies for that. So yeah, you're correct. We've had that carried in the 5-year capital plan in 2023 for several years now. And you're correct. We got a portion of that completed this year. So due to the accelerated degradation of the road there, the call was made to incorporate a portion of that into the paving plan this year. So we got a good chunk of it done there this year. There's still some things that we need to look at in regards with the retaining walls that are around there. So that's why we've left that lower portion out. We're waiting on some assessments and recommendations from consulting firms on that before we move forward with completing the rest of it. And the plan would be to finish off the remainder of it in 2023 with the approved capital budget that we have in there now.
Councillor McBain.
Yeah, I just got a couple questions. Maybe some are a little bit more pointed. When I'm looking at 2022 and I see numbers that are completely rounded off, I start getting a little bit concerned. One in particular, I think Rick's on the horn. The new fire station, we got just 600 grand flat. Do we have a design? Do we have estimates to go off of? Like, I mean, where's that number coming from?
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, no problem. So the number was originally generated 2 or 3 years back with some projected cost increases. Is rounded off right now, and we are so close to having a design and something we can put out for an RFP so we can get locked in on what those costs are. We were pushing the architects to have that done by the end of October, or before the end of October. It looks like we're getting them this week, and we'll be able to provide more detail on what those costs are exactly very shortly.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
You bet.
So just on that, couple of questions as well, Rick. So in addition to this project, kind of later on, you've also got the fire training, the proposal to move fire training from Tech down to beside Fire Station 2. We've got the new truck coming in. I guess we've got a number of these independent projects, and I'm wondering, do you have or have you looked at kind of taking a step back to look at the big picture and what strategically kind of is the long-term plan for fire facilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a bit of a map. And it's kind of been an ongoing thing for about the last year, working on a long-term plan for the fire department, which would be a 20-year plan. Part of the work I have done is on facilities and looking at how we're going to manage that going into the future, and surrounding all of the factors such as call rank volunteers, where they're converging, fire trucks that are in their logical positions within the city, looking at the training center as we are going to invest in the training center. But what I'm hesitant to suggest that we do is invest hundreds of thousands of dollars on safe fire training props to meet the new standards that are pending on a chunk of land that we don't actually own. So that plays into this as well. So there are several factors that go into all of these decisions, and a lot of them basically are around creating something that is sustainable, that we won't have to put much investment in the next 30 years overall. We've been kind of lucky on the fire side. We haven't spent a lot on capital. We've purchased the odd truck, including a ladder truck, over the last few years. Facilities, for instance, the Marysville Fire Hall was actually purchased with funds raised during the 2003 firestorm, I believe it was. Well, one of our trucks was out being deployed in the region or locally. So, we've kind of been lucky that way, and we've got to look at the next evolution. And that's kind of what we're working on here, is coming up with something that will create, a sustainable, effective fire service for the next 20 to 30 years.
Councillor McBain.
Hey, Rick, sorry to pick on you, man. Just one more question. Kind of alluding to like that vision. I mean, I would be really interested to see kind of how that's laid out. And one of the things I think would be maybe something to think about, and if you may have already, but just thinking about the fact that our EOC is downtown currently, right? Like it's at the main hall here.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Is you guys looked at like potentially having like the ability to, or have a secondary location for an EOC? And the reason I'm thinking about that is because of, the flood risk that we still face here in town, and, just to have some redundancy. Is that something that you guys have thought about?
Yeah, absolutely. So our EOC, our technology essentially is portable for the most part. So we can pack it up and move it. As far as the facility goes to put it in, at this point in time, part of our proposed expansion at the Marysville station would put in a room that could double as an or a command post should we need it. That's part of the kind of double duty that change to that Marysville station would be. As well, we have we still work with the regional district. Should we have to abandon ship and leave town, gosh, I really would, that's something that's very extreme chance of happening. But if it did and we ended up had to leave town, of course, we could work out of the regional district's EOC. We've also secured some soft agreements with Cranbrook Fire to utilize their facilities should we need it. And then during those events, we often have procurement. The logistics division is working on procuring sites for us to store and run our equipment as well. So, there are certain contingencies based on the scenario, but a logical one within town would be potentially that Marysville fire station.
Yeah. Okay, just wanted to make sure you guys are giving it some thought. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So I guess, Rick, that, this 600 grand plus or minus to be confirmed is sitting in the budget for next year. I think, clearly before we're going to get the final numbers, before final approval to go ahead. I don't have a problem with leaving it in 2022, but I think it would be prudent to finish up and get a look at that strategic plan, the broader picture, before any approval to go ahead with the, with that extra garage downtown, would be considered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have a problem with that. It's kind of sitting in draft and I revisit it every week or so with small changes and what I can do is pull it out, polish it up and get it to council for sure.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anything further? Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just one thing for that, Rick. I think what I'd like to see is the least invasive, least costly option, A, and then next costly item, B, and C, and on it goes. I guess one part, I would just, we can't change the requirements for equipment and under insurance and all of that, but I'm dreading the thought of seeing the requirement for a brand new fire hall and what the cost of that would be, which would be, I'm sure, quite high. But anyway, it would be nice to see what is the cheapest way to deal with new equipment coming to the city, new fire engines coming. What's the best way to deal with that?
Okay, Councillor Goodwin, then Councillor Roberts.
Okay, I'd like to move over to storm drains. I was looking at the Boundary Street storm infrastructure proposal, and it talks about making some changes for the new development at the Watkins site and some tech drainage issues. Will it also solve the ongoing storm problem we have there with the water coming down from town site and erupting from the storm drains and flowing down to the United Church? Is that all going to get fixed at the same time? And who should I ask?
Go ahead, Nick.
That's Rob.
Or Rob, I beg your pardon. Go ahead, Rob.
Mute, Rob.
Are you on mute?
I am not on mute now. Actually, Chris was going to provide comment on the for the Boundary Street stuff here. He's probably better suited to provide some talking on this one.
Go ahead, Chris.
He's on mute.
Chris Mummery. Are you
Oh,
there?
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was struggling to get unmuted here. Yeah, so the Boundary Street project that's coming up in 2022 won't completely solve that. It'll certainly make some improvements to that infrastructure. There is a project in year 2026, the Kimberley Avenue project that has a storm component in it that will ultimately make all those corrections that you're referring to. So it is a little ways down the road for the full solution, but this will be a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
I have a simple question, Jim. Throughout the report, there is an acronym JOW. Could you please tell me what that means?
Sorry, Jim will be away.
Oh, thank
I
you.
couldn't fit it all in that line.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense now.
Councillor Dallin.
What is our life expectancy on City Hall right now? Does anybody have that number off the top of their head? 10 years over?
It's been written off to not worth anything. So I would say we're living on borrowed time, but we're comfortable here. It's updated. There's no short-term plans to do anything with City Hall.
If further, just with the consideration of unfortunately looking at a new fire hall, right? That's kind of where that thought was going from.
I'm sorry, if I could just jump in there.
I was going to say, would that be added to the assessment, building assessments?
I think that Nicole probably has that one on the priority list, City Hall to be one of the first facilities that undergoes that process, and it'll provide us with some science behind that.
Ahead of the ball again. Thanks, guys.
Right, anything further? Go ahead.
Just a quick added question for Chris Mummery around the Boundary Street redevelopment. In that project, the redevelopment of Watkins, former Watkins School, is anything happening on Deer Park? Every time I walk down the sidewalk, I think, oh man, that's an absolute disaster. Is that, and the reason I'm asking this is tech actually going to come around, or is it just strictly boundary? Like I'm just thinking in terms of the sidewalk that's along there. Is that our responsibility, or we're going to get some help replacing that, or is that developer?
Just correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Oakley, but you're referring to the sidewalk on the Deer Park section versus the boundary section?
Yes, Deer Park. Yeah.
Okay. At this time, the Boundary Street project won't involve the Deer Park component. It will at the intersection only. The Deer Park component of the sidewalk and infrastructure along that side is in 49 Deer Park's project plans. So they have some proposals that are in the planning stage right now on what that street might look like and be upgraded to support some businesses and things like that along that area. So that's a little bit behind the Boundary Street project.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councillor McBain.
Hey, Chris, this is just to touch on that. Is it getting to the intersection so that I'm just assuming it gets to the intersection so you don't have to rip the road up twice, right? You get to the corner and then you can build off of Boundary Street after.
Yeah,
Or sorry, off of Deer Park. I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the design done so that when they come in after the fact, it won't impact Boundary Street.
Perfect. Okay, thanks.
So a question regarding 2025, the last item, 304th Street, 308 Ave and 95A intersection. Is that down by the arena? Is that the park, Triangle Park or whatever it's called down there? And I guess my specific question is, it's $41,000. What on earth are we going to do for 41 grand at the intersection?
Would you like me? I can answer that question if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, awesome. Please, Chris.
Yeah, so we have just a really unusual intersection at that location where we have 5 streets that intersect with the highway there.
Yep.
So we're looking at designing a bit of a change in that intersection to create a safer access onto the highway for those intersections. So
is the 41
it's not a large project. It's just something to correct that intersection.
So is the 41 for design, or is that to do the work?
No, it's work included.
Oh, okay. Cosmetic.
A little bit, but we think that it'll solve some traffic issues there.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Absolutely.
Further?
Okay, jump in. Thanks for all the questions.
Go ahead, Jim.
Awesome. So just, I think you might already be there, Mr. Mayor, but we'll skip to page 5, the road program summary. So this just, it combines, if there's projects that are road reconstruction where they include paving, storm, sewer, water, I've just kind of got them all put together here so you can see how much those reconstruction projects are costing. You'll see across the top there's an acronym ATP, should probably be ATNP, that's Active Transportation Network Plan. So as these road reconstruction projects come up, there are predetermined projects identified in that plan, and the operations department, if it fits with that plan, they'll include that. So the Jim Ogilvie Way project, they've got a component of that plan incorporated into it. The first one, we've had a bit of discussion about this already, but the Foundry Street reconstruction, it does include components of that project that are specifically, they benefit tech or they benefit the 49 Deer Park development. So the portion of the costs associated with those components of the project are going to be recouped from tech or the developer. So of that $2,074,000 cost, about $1,050,000 of that is going to be recovered from those two parties. And if we don't have agreements in place in advance of that project starting, then we'll just proceed without them. I mean, if for whatever reason we can't come to an agreement on repayment terms or, don't have something signed, we're not going to proceed with that component of the project. We'll just do the work that we need to do on behalf of the city and carry on.
Go ahead, Jason.
Is just out of curiosity, is there any hesitancy on either party, or is that why you brought that up, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Czech project, I mean, they're keen to get that work done while the roads open up. I think we're going to be able to come to terms with them. This project was originally planned to go ahead in 2021. And I think there was some discussions with the developer at that point in time of the Watkins School site. And, that's not the entire reason that project was delayed, but, there was a bit of work that needed to be done to get to an agreement on that. So, it's possible that we're really hoping we can come to an agreement with the developer in particular, because for that development to go ahead, this work is going to need to be done. So if they're not doing it while the road's ripped up, they're going to have to rip it up again in a year or 2 or 3 or whenever they get that going. So it'd be in everybody's best interest just to get it done while the road's torn up. Another thing you'll notice on here is the design component in these projects. You'll see it in 2024, 2025. All these reconstruction projects in the year preceding the year of construction. The operations crew, what they're doing is they're breaking out that design and engineering component, plugging it in. That does a couple things for us. It allows us to dial the costs in the year ahead of construction, and it also allows us to, rather than rushing with the design in the first quarter of the year, we already have that done. Lets us get the tenders out earlier. Hopefully it'll give us some more competitive bids and allow us to get those projects done earlier in the year. So I was really happy to see him do that. I think it's a great idea. So all the big projects, you'll see that start to happen as we go through the 5-year plans here. So on to the fleet, unless there's any questions there. This is a really aggressive replacement plan for fleet. We're spending just about $4 million over the 5 years, averaging $785,000 a year. You'll see the early years of the plan, 2022, we've got, 3 big pieces of equipment being replaced there, spending $1.3 million, and then it scales down a bit towards the end of the 5-year plan. Once we've got things caught up a bit here, the plan is to level it off where we're spending about, $350,000 or $360,000 a year. That's what we're contributing to the fleet reserve, so that, we want to have a 20-year plan in place so that we've kind of got that rolling balance going in, and the guys kind of having it figured out, so we're not lumping a bunch of big expenditures into in 1 year.
Councillor McBain.
Just curious, Jim, has there been any discussion about, like, I'm just looking at the 2 pickups here, and I noticed with the manager's vehicle, it was noted on there that, we're going to be targeting either a hybrid or a full electric. And just knowing that pickups are in about a year or two out for that type of implementation, was there any talk of deferring those until we could get to implementation of a hybrid or an electric for those types of things? Or are we gonna put enough miles on where it doesn't even matter anyways?
Yeah.
Need to be replaced? I don't know. I'm just curious if there's any.
Yeah, Nick is in charge of the fleet. Nick, do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, can you just repeat your question so I'm clear on that?
Yeah, sorry, Nick. It's just, you guys have got two trucks on there, set to be replaced next year. And I know pickups are, I know Ford, and I think Ford's coming out next year with electrics, and, all the major companies are coming out within the next 2 or 3 years. Was that a consideration to maybe try to squeeze a little bit more life out of what we got until we can get, implementation of electrics or hybrids?
We are pursuing the electric hybrid option currently, for the manager's vehicle in particular. And it is something we are discussing. I don't think there's a need to defer at this point if we're looking at the hybrid option. Definitely, if we want to go something with the full electric, deferring a year or two might be beneficial there.
Yeah, I was talking,
Nick, he's referring to the pickups.
What the pickups? Yeah, I saw the manager's vehicle.
The 1 ton.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, for the pickups, if we did want to go the full option there, I would agree. Maybe a couple more years in technology advances and proving those out would be helpful. For the utilities, trucks like that, we're definitely on the cusp of just exploring those options for the electric vehicles on that.
That's all I was wondering. I mean, in the time it takes, you may put enough miles on. I just was curious if it was considered, that's all.
Yeah, maybe I can.
It is definitely something we are looking into. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just wanted to add a little bit to Nick's comments there. The 1 ton pickups that we're using for the water service trucks, those are very heavily loaded trucks and are carrying a lot of weight around. There isn't anything being offered currently that fits that need. But certainly we are looking at the parks and facilities pickup. If they do come out with something suitable there, we may switch that up and go to a 1/2 ton if the truck fits. But we are watching the electric side of things very closely and looking forward to the days when they offer something that will be suitable for us.
Yeah, no, fair enough, Chris. That's good. Thanks.
So, Jim, comments surrounding aggressive fleet replacement. If I remember correctly, fleet was the worst of our asset classes when we had the asset management plan done, something like 15% of life left in the overall fleet. So, being aggressive at this point to get us back to, some semblance of order, I think is completely appropriate.
Yeah, that's exactly why you're seeing these big numbers come before council. Just with regards to the AMIP, we have as council is aware, we've been getting an update and some training amongst the staff to learn how to do that update internally as opposed to getting the external consultants to do it. We've got a meeting scheduled next Tuesday, I think it is, February 8th or 9th, with the consultants just to find out where that project is at. I anticipate being able to bring that AMIP updated back to council before this budget thing is said and done. So it shouldn't be too much longer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just one more comment on the fleet, and then we'll move on. So you'll see the second line in, we've got a loader, $150,000 loader budgeted. Currently, we rent a loader in the wintertime for 4 months to the tune of $30,000 for the cost of that. So the idea, once we get this loader in the yards, that $30,000 expense on an annual basis will disappear, and it'll give us a loader year round instead of just 4 months. Number 28 that's going to get retired once we get that one in. They don't take that thing too far from the yards because they're worried about it not making it back. So it's to the point where we need a new machine in there in any event. We'll flip to the next page then, page 7, which is, it talks about the grant, debt and or third-party funded funding dependent projects. And we've talked about this a bit already, but so these projects, most of them are dependent on grant funding. So if the grants don't come through on those projects, they'll either have to be changed, deferred, canceled. Some of them, they need to get done, so we're going to have to continue to try and get grant funding. Other projects like the Kerning ring chiller, for example, you know, some of this stuff is life safety. So if we don't get the grants, we may have to come back similar to Center 64 and approach council to get approval for alternate funding just to get those projects done. But again, there's $72.7 million worth of those projects. We're hoping for grant funds of $51 million to get all of those done. And recurring theme here, the wastewater treatment plant again is the largest of those projects, anticipating construction in 2024. And on the next page, page 8, project planning.
Excuse me, Jim.
Oh,
Just before we leave that. So I guess I have a question for Nick with regard to the Curbside Organics. So this is we've had a number of discussions about this in the past. It's a new service, and it's not insubstantial with respect to cost, and there still is a fair amount of kind of uncertainty associated with it. I know we have one grant that has been issued. Scott?
We're not supposed to be announcing that.
Announcing what?
Grant.
Oh, okay. Well, scratch that. That's not an announcement, I guess. We have one grant that is out. And others, actually a couple of others that that will be there as well. I guess where I'm going with this is that, you know, I'd hate to see us get into a position where securing grants is the reason why we move forward. And I guess I'm just wondering from your perspective, you know, kind of why is the curbside side of things important and important enough to be forging ahead over the next fiscal year?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So in regards to the Curbside Organics, well, the biggest driver for this is the environmental side of things in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and waste diversion, which is in line with our OICP. With the granting opportunities that came forward, we decided this was a good option, a good opportunity for us to apply for these and see if we can implement this with Kimberly. We are optimistic on receiving these grants, and I will be putting together a future staff report, hopefully next council meeting, to discuss this in more depth, and we'll have an update on the current status of the grants that are out there and some future grants that have become available.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that, Nick. I'll look forward to kind of a broader discussion. I don't think anybody disputes the concept, kind of what the goals of the concept are, but I think we also have to look at a practicality lens with respect to our particular community on, you know, what makes sense and how is that going to impact what's already been done with respect to, you know, organics, you know, in the community. So we'll look forward to seeing that report. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep. So moved on to page 8 there, project. So this, it just kind of lists the projects where we have money in the budget to do a study or a plan. And the idea behind that is that it will further inform the timing and cost of those projects too. So to Councillor McBain's earlier point about the truck bays, the first one there, once we get that design finished, that'll dial in the project cost. And some of these, it may not only dial in the project cost, but it might alter the timing as well. So just a bit of a heads up to council that once that work gets done, it'd likely result in some changes to the plan going forward. So the next couple pages here.
Jim, sorry, I was slow at the switch. So there's two feasibility studies that aren't on this list. The one for the Marysville industrial area and the other for the Marysville bench. that we had kind of commissioned here a couple of weeks ago.
Good points, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we do have a resolution from council approving that those go forward for inclusion in the 5-year financial plan, but I'll certainly get this added to the list going forward.
Thank you. Councillor McBain.
I just wanted to comment, Jim. I think this is really helpful. It also gives us a chance just to look at the designs like ahead of time and provide comments. Kind of doing a little, it's not last minute, but it just gives us a little bit more. So I think this is great.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any more questions on this one? Okay. So pages 9 and 10 are our listing of the 2022 capital projects that are proposed for completion next year. For each of the projects listed on here, for every line item, there's a project sheet in the next section. I referred to this before, where there's a bit of a description, justification, the project costs and how we're going to pay for it. I'm not going to read those project sheets. Again, they're really more for reference for council going forward, but I will touch on a few of the projects in here and maybe ask some of the operations folks to speak to them. And if there's any other specific projects that council has questions on for this year, please jump in. There's the columns here. So the original budget column. So those were the projects approved in year 2 of the current 5-year financial plan. So those were the budgets that were approved last year. Then there's the requested changes to come to the proposed budget for this year. Requested changes come about for a variety of reasons. Some of those are carry forwards from 2021, where for whatever reason the project didn't get completed or won't be completed by the end of the year. And the other part of the change could be that the budgets were increased for those particular projects. It has been a challenging year. I think the engineering folks went through and reworked, I think, all of the budgets in the 5-year plan for the big construction projects based on current construction cost estimates, as recommended by the consulting engineers. They've added 30% contingencies into those projects as well. I think they were saying the PVC, the pipes, they've gone up anywhere from 50 to 110% based on depending on what type of pipe we're talking about. We just got a memo from the consulting engineers last week saying get ready for another 11% increase on PVC. So it just, we could hope, we could take the strategy of pushing this stuff back for 2 or 3 years, hoping the cost rate to come down, but it's not likely. And I think it's best just to forge on and get this stuff done.
Sorry, Councillor McBain. Thank you.
You may be able to answer this, Jim. If not, maybe one of the other managers, but I assume a lot of this is supply chain issues, the global supply chain for materials. Is that kind of is that the primary reason?
That's the primary reason.
Yeah.
The budget request forms that came forward from the managers, that was the predominant theme, is that supply shortages due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's having a lot to do with stuff.
I guess further, if I may,
You bet.
the other questions, I guess, would be to the managers. How have our local contractors been as far as, booking out into next year? Has it been, are they busier than normal or where are we at for availability of contractors?
Yeah, I can answer that if you like, Councillor McBain.
Sure.
Yeah, certainly, things are relatively steady for the local contractors from what we're hearing. They are always interested in our work. There's no doubt about that. And they encourage us, as we would like to as well, to get those projects out in front of them as early as possible so that they can start working on those, fitting them into their schedule, and all those types of things. So those are the pieces of the puzzle that we're working hard to get in place right now so that we can try and secure those contractors early in the season and get them before they take off to other areas.
So what I'm hearing, Chris, is not completely unusual, but the fact that we're getting those designs like a year ahead or so, or almost a year ahead, Could help significantly.
Yes,
Correct.
and even as things as like, if we can get those folks secured early, they can actually procure the pipe and materials early so that they're not seeing those kind of inflationary rates that have been happening out there.
Yeah, great. Okay,
Yep.
thanks, Chris.
You bet.
So further to that, if I may, Chris, the Marston Street Bridge project, which was supposed to happen last year and got deferred because we had no bids. So can you just elaborate on kind of the no bid thing? Was it because it was late in the year, or, you know, kind of what was the reason for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Nick can chime in here too if I get anything off track on that, but we did get that out a little bit later than we wanted to. The contractors that got back to us on it let us know that essentially they'd been already booked up for the year, and that they would be able to provide us a much more reasonable bid if we got that out to them early this coming year.
So is the plan then for these things that are well defined is to get that out in December, January? Kind of what's the timing for getting these things out?
Yeah, absolutely, as early as possible. So as soon as council approves these budgets, then we will start working towards that.
Okay, a couple of other things, if I may, Jim.
Please.
So in the 2-inch water line replacement, how much galvanized 2-inch galvanized pipe do we actually have? Like, this project is going to replace some, but what is this as a percentage of what's out there?
Well, that's a difficult number. I haven't looked at our exact footage of or per meter of pipe that we still have left in the system, but I will say this is a very small percentage of the 2-inch galvanized pipe that we have out there. We have a long ways to go.
So we prioritize around areas that break, I take it?
Yes, absolutely. This one is one that's, there's some areas here that we're going to target this year that have been giving us some grief over the years. And some of them are ones that have been on the want-to-do list for quite some time now.
And on the next project, the Morrison Sub PRV and kiosk, can you just explain what the looping of the water system? It said that 2018 it was eliminated. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll let Rob chime in as well as we go along here, but that was part of the intended to be originally part of the PRV project that was proposed that we worked on back in 2017. The one particular PRV that they had proposed in the design didn't work out as planned. Some adjustments were made to do some different things on that project which ended up eliminating the looping in the Morrison subsection. So we've been looking at getting that back in place and reinstated in the last couple of years, but we've been struggling to get that one done.
Thanks, Chris.
Does that answer the question or?
Yeah, thank you. Jim, do you want to just kind of keep going questions down the individuals here, or?
Yeah.
If you have others you want to point out.
I've got a few I want to point out.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. Just to give Nicole a chance here, Manager of Parks and Facilities, one of the things I wanted to highlight is the Civic Center and Kerning Ring chiller replacement. It's the third line up from the bottom on page 9 there. We had budgeted for that $130,000 in 2021. That was going to be just the Civic Center replacement. A recent cost estimate on that came in at $400,000. We also had the Kerning Ring budgeted in 2023 for the same cost. Nicole's identified an opportunity here to get a larger chiller to replace, to run both pads. The estimate on that is $769,000. And she's also indicated that from a logistical perspective, it would make sense to have that done at the same time the arena's torn apart with the pad board glass replacement. So the pad and board, as council is aware, we've applied for a few grants on that one. The last one was applied for in October 2020. We're still waiting to hear back. from the grant funding agencies. So there's a grant opportunity for the chiller as well. I think it's 80 or 90% funding that Nicole is going to put a grant application in for. So it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a timing thing here with these two grant applications outstanding. And we may, as I noted in the project description here, we may end up coming back to council at some point. If the grant funding on either of those is unsuccessful, we may come back and have to look for alternate funding sources to get those projects done.
Okay. So on that, Nicole, are there any risks, significant risks associated with any delays in that?
Currently now, thank you, Mayor, sorry. Currently, after speaking with our service provider, Can West, they've indicated that the chiller plant at the Civic Center, there is no concern for failure there. And I think with the findings from the building condition assessment, we'll be able to answer that question a lot better for you shortly.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Councillor McBain.
I have a question for Nicole. We're talking a lot about, some of the, the functional items of the city with regard to infrastructure, but, being the parks manager, you get to deal with a lot of the pretty things that we look at. Is there anything that have you gone through with the parks in general and looked at things, for potential, upgrades or, things that maybe we're missing just because we're focused on pipes in the ground and roads and whatnot? Is there anything that we're missing with respect to parks?
Thank you, Councillor. I think you'll see over the course of the budget process, you'll see some additions which have indicated some upgrades to the park system. So you'll see within the operational plan, some improvements to irrigation, some improvements to deal with some liability concerns that we have within the parks, to get some training opportunities for staff members to have a closer look at our playgrounds to ensure they're up to snuff. We've got a few projects with some community partners coming up, so I would like to be heavily involved with those to make sure that we're meeting the guidelines provided by Canadian safety authorities. So I think we're not missing the point by any means. I think we certainly need to pay attention to those parks and their operations, but no immediate liability concerns right now.
Further?
Yeah, I would just be curious. I think, over the next year or so, Nicole, if you could, come to us with, potential enhancements maybe that you see too. I mean, I know we've dealt with a few issues in the last year or so with parks, and I know parks can be a really sensitive issue to some of our residents. And, I think some of them probably could, use some enhancements beyond just safety and liability concerns. So just something to think about moving forward. If you've got ideas on how things could be enhanced, I'd be curious to check it out. I know that's kind of an aside, but.
Yep. No, thanks for that, Councillor McBain.
I appreciate the comment for sure. That's something that I like to do, is a little bit of long-term planning for the Parks and Recreation Department. So would like to look at a 10-year plan for us and ultimately define the goals and objectives and define some service levels and look to the community to see what they would like either enhanced or maybe improved upon.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for Jim and possibly Nicole. I don't know who to direct this to, but under the Civic Center pad and board replacement, under the project description, it says at the bottom line there, I quote, "This may require the cancellation or deferral of other planned projects to allow for the reallocation of budgeted reserve spending to the Civic Center project." So that's, because we're having trouble getting the grant funding. So I'm a little bit concerned about, I just want clarity on that. Does that mean we're going to stop, if we don't get grant funding, there's no more fire halls being built. We have to focus on this. Is that what that's saying? Does it go beyond Parks and Rec, or is it within Parks and Rec that there would be cuts coming?
No, I think we would look to the whole capital budget, but it would be, you know, as Nicole said, there's not necessarily any urgent safety concerns with the chiller replacements and the pad boards glass. So it would be, if you don't get grant funding this year, it'll probably be deferred until next year as a project. And so we could look to 2023 for projects, because we're hoping for, between those two projects, I think it's 1.2 million in grant funding is the way it's budgeted right now. So if we don't get that grant funding, we're looking for some significant money to get those projects done. And as you know, I guess as long as there's not a real safety concern, we could in theory keep bumping that thing back. But as you know, the Civic pad and board replacement has been bumped back a number of times. This building condition assessment, the Civic is one of the first facilities getting done. So that's going to help shed some light on the urgency of that project as well. You know, that's something that I've always asked is, you know, we've had this in the budget forever and it keeps getting bumped. Like what is the urgency? Like, is this something that absolutely needs to be done, or can we push it down the road for another 5 years? So I'm really happy to see Nicole's getting that done, because it's going to shed some light on, I think, a bunch of these projects.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. There? Oh. You had that further look in your eye. Oh. Go ahead, Jim.
Any other questions on any of the 2022 projects here?
Yep. So a comment on the downtown strategy. So I think the conversations that we've had about this in the past, since it first came up back in 2017, have been around streets, problem corners, reallocation, restructuring basically. But I think as in this project description, I think appropriately it's talked about all of the non-structural things that we'll be looking at in this. And I think it's important to look at this as a much broader, downtown project than just structure. So enhancements to green space, installation of street trees, lighting, benches, public art, etc. All of those things to help not just enhance, but maybe even redefine exactly what downtown looks like. So I just wanted to point out that it's a much larger view than just the way the streets work.
And just further to that project, I mean, once we get this design done and grant opportunities come up, like we've had the Pottsville parking lot revite. We've applied for a couple of different grants on that. But we don't have a design that we can send them or get detailed costs. So I think that we have this done, we can potentially pull pieces out of it and get it done when opportunities come up. We'll have the information there for a shovel ready project.
Yeah. Should we give Councillor McBain a couple?
Oh, good. Long day.
Sorry, Jason.
So unless there's anything else on these 2022 projects, they're the ones that are imminent and are, going to happen in the not too distant future here. So I do want to get any questions answered that you guys have.
Just, if I may, a general question of, I don't know, this might be for Maurice even, if there's any way we can make resolutions to put certain things out for tender before we've approved the budget process. Is there any way we can do that so that we can get tenders coming in before the end of the year even?
I would suggest not.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of need to have the, formal authorization to proceed with those projects before we go through that formal process of tendering. I mean, when these guys are putting those tenders together, it's a lot of work. And if for some reason they were to go off the rails and not get approved, then we could find ourselves in a position where there's some liability to those folks.
Scott, then Councillor Robert.
Not to be contrary, Jim, but there are probably a few projects that have been in the 5-year plan for a number of years. The costs haven't changed. They're still a priority, where we could come to council and say, further to the 5-year plan bylaw, from last year. We'd like to get this one out early. Is that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like with the 5-year plan, if there was something identified in year 2 of the 21 to 25 plan, the cost didn't change. And the operations folks are aware that they could in theory have put those tenders out, 6 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor McBain?
Is that only if costs hadn't changed, like if the scope was exactly the same, or is there some leeway there?
There's not leeway to invent a new budget number.
Sure.
For it. And as you've seen with some new management coming on board, some escalating unit price costs, it's a bit riskier this year than other years, but
Right.
There will probably be a few that we feel comfortable getting out earlier. And if we're unsure, we can come back to council. Really, we should be operating off the budget.
Yeah, well, it's good to know there's some flexibility there. Anyways. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And that's the idea of getting this, as we go forward, getting this 5-year plan dialed in tight so that, we can kind of get that stuff out early.
Well, Mr. Mayor, my point would be that if something arose that needed our attention because of a grant opportunity coming forward, I'm quite willing to come and have a meeting to have a discussion with that. I don't need to wait for another 2 weeks or another month to make that decision. I'd be quite happy to be called to a special meeting to deal with something.
Yeah, and I guess for clarification, more than I don't want to muddy the waters here, but one of our goals here, and really what we're talking about doing, is having council approve the projects and their associated budgets as detailed in the plan for inclusion in the financial plan bylaw. So I guess my question is, I don't think staff needs to wait until that bylaw has been passed before a tender can go out on a particular project. If council has already approved it for inclusion into the financial plan, why would we need to wait for the bylaw to be passed?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think based on this, but I think until that approval isn't given until the bylaw is adopted, I mean, you provided us with direction to go ahead and include it in the 5-year plan. That's the reasoning behind that, the last part of that resolution, to amend the current 5-year plan rather than waiting until May of next year to get it approved through the adoption of the new plan.
Okay, so the bylaw is not approved until May.
But what we're going to do is we're going to amend years 2 through 5 of the 21 to 25 5-year plan.
Right.
So I'll bring forward an amendment, and that'll give us the formal approval without having to wait until adoption.
Okay, that was my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the environment that we're working in here today, we delay by a month or 2 or 3. I mean, we already saw no bids on the Marston Street project, and the last thing we want to do is to get into a situation where we either have no bids or, quite frankly, even worse, one bid. Because you never know how much extra we're paying for that single bid.
And Mr. Mayor, it would seem that what he just said is that we will be operating underneath year 2 to 5 until such time as we have a new bylaw, right? That original bylaw is in place until we have a new bylaw.
That's
right. Yeah, 2022 is the only year that matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything else is subject to change anyway, and it's in future years. So it's really all about the projects in 2022 that we're like the new year that we're talking about. Okay, thanks. I think I got it.
Yeah. And I mean, the only time anything beyond 2022 would matter is, in this plan, we've got the wastewater treatment plant as well. I mean, those numbers are going to change as well, but with the process we're going through with the loan authorization bylaw and the grant and stuff, we're going to want to get that 2024, 2025 stuff dialed in, because we're going to send it along as support for the grant application. But yeah, again, so we'll amend bylaws so we get that stuff in there. Anything else on 2022? Okay, so we'll just, and again, I'm not going to go through these project description sheets or the project sheets, but I'll just ask Maurice, if we can just flip to page 12 there, the first page, just so I can kind of go through it. So the top section there where we've got the design, tender RFP issued and the completion delivery, those are to plug dates into. That's kind of the next step here. So once formal authorization is received to proceed with this stuff, then the operations guys can go in and plug those in so that we've got dates to look forward to on those. And again, the purpose of these sheets is to, provide a bit of a one pager just to give a brief overview on what the project is, why we're doing it, and how we're paying for it. So I'd like to just skip past that section then unless the council's got any specific questions on any of those pages, and jump right back to page 82, which is the 5-year capital plan for 2023. And I'll just go through each of the 5 years, so 2023 to 2026, touch on a few of the more significant projects here, and the same exercise. If council has any questions for any of the managers, please just jump in. So 2023, the big project is Jim Ogilvie Way. In total, it's a $2.4 million project that we've got going on there. There was some scope changes, I think, in addition to the cost increases for that project. I think the operations guys also realized that there was some additional base work to do on that road. So that project, the previously approved budget in the current 5-year financial plan, it was increased by over $900,000 to that $2.4 million project. The other big thing you'll see in 2023 here is the wastewater treatment plant dropping out of 2023 and being moved to 2024 and 25. The process that we're in now with the grant opportunity, the loan authorization bylaw on that whole piece, we're not going to be through the elector assent process and all the various assorted steps associated with that until early 2023. We're not going to find out about the grant until the spring of 2023. So with that grant, the latest we can start that project is 2 years after the date of the application of the grant. So we're going to submit that on January 26th, 2022. So we have to start that project by January 26, 2024. So that's kind of why the timing has been advanced. That 2023 date is it's not realistic. So we just reallocated that project to where we anticipate that construction actually happening. So that's really the biggest project in 2023. Unless there's any questions, I'll jump on to the next year for the plan. Okay, so 2024, again, we've got half year's worth of construction, and it's split 50-50 at this point in time for the wastewater treatment plant. Again, we are anticipating updated costs on that. And it's not going to be a straight 50-50 split. Obviously, once we get closer to that date, we may have to push some of that money from 2024 to 2025 or vice versa. Another big project in there is the UV treatment at Mark Creek Head Tank. That $3.2 million estimate, I suspect that that's going to change as well once we get closer to that date and time. There is some design work for that project in 2023, so that'll impact that cost and what actually makes it into that 5-year plan.
So I have a question about that one, if I may.
Yeah.
So have we previously applied for a grant for the UV? Do you know?
Not that I'm.
So I guess it's my understanding that the ministry requires at least two levels of treatment for the water, which we only have one today, which is chlorine, and the UV will be the second. So are we cool with the ministry on this? I mean, we're talking about 2024 here. It's another 2 years out. Do we have any exposures there, I guess is what I'm asking. Chris, can you maybe answer that?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. I have had conversations with Interior Health about our status as far as water treatment. At this point, with all the work that we've been doing with the Watershed Committee and the level of reporting and testing and all those things that we're doing for our drinking water in the Mark Creek system, They're comfortable at this point, haven't given me any reason to be concerned. They're happy that it's in our 5-year capital plan and that we are getting closer to that date. And, you know, they are aware that we're looking at design in 2023 and then the possible construction of that addition in 2024. So they're aware of it, and we've been keeping in touch regularly.
Okay, awesome. I don't know why I get the feeling that this has been deferred a few times.
It's certainly been adjusted. We had it in there for a significantly lower cost, and I think we adjusted it either last year or the year prior. We did have an estimate done on that by an engineer, and we applied some inflationary factors to it to get to the 3.2. But again, I do anticipate with it being a larger project that once that design work's complete, it'll probably won't go down probably.
Okay. Councillor McBain.
The question on the Knighton Road realignment, I assume that's probably to deal with the lower end where it curves around by the school, but is the old electric line, the hump in the road there, is that included into that as well? Nick, you might have an answer for that.
Yeah,
yes. So currently it is not included in that design right now.
Okay.
Could I?
Should it be?
Yes.
Yeah, we can definitely look at incorporating it into there.
Yeah, I think it could be a pretty low cost improvement.
I would agree. Yeah.
Councillor Roberts.
Just with regard to that corner at the Knighton Boulevard there, right at there's a whole big lot there where a hall used to be, a big hall that was built there, a 3-story concrete building, and it burned down. So don't be surprised if you dig in there and find some concrete foundations that weren't removed. Just saying.
Very good. Thanks very much for that heads up on that.
Go ahead, Jim.
Final word on that project. My understanding is that due to the realignment of that road, we're going to end up with, I think it was potentially 3 residential lots that the city could sell and put some money into the Land Development Reserve Fund. So
yes, that's correct. That's the current plan right now.
Yeah, was it 3 lots, Nick?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. So on to 2025, unless there's any questions, 2024. Again, the big story is the second part of the wastewater treatment plants, and also some offsite infrastructure associated with that, being the outflow diffuser, $650,000. One project that we're not going to see in here for the wastewater treatment plant, we've got it bumped out a few years, is the decommissioning of the old plant. So in the report that went to council last week, it was estimated at $850,000. So that's something that we're hoping we're going to be able to undertake over a period of time outside of the scope of this current 5-year financial plan. But that's something that we have to keep in mind as part of that project as well. 2026, the last year of the plan. Just looking down that list, nothing on its own looks like a very big project, but as we saw under the road project summary, there's 3 large reconstruction projects, being Kimberly Ave at 1.4 million, Rotary Drive at 1.3, section of Rotary Drive, and then Higgins about $1.1 million. So there's $4 million worth of road reconstruction projects in that year. The non-capital projects are listed here as well for the 5 years of the plan. I'm not going to review those unless.
Can I make a comment just back? So it looks like, Nick, you're what, a 5% increase per year roughly on the annual road rehab? Looks to be close to that anyway. I just would like to really provide accolades to you guys on the work that you've been doing with that small amount of money that you have to work with. This year in particular, I can't tell you the number of comments I'm getting from residents around town about all of the awesome patching and catching up with the pavement. You know, pavement a lot of times is the first thing that doesn't make the cut, or it's the first thing to be cut in lieu of something else. And yet it's one of the most visible things that residents have to look at in terms of where the taxpayers or the tax dollars are going. And boy, I got to tell you, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on that this year. So congrats on the work you guys are doing.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's much appreciated. We were very fortunate this year that we got some very good, very competitive pricing in, and we were able to tackle a few more spots than initially anticipated. And I think that road assessment that we had completed back in 2019 is helping us really dig down into it and evaluate which areas we need to be looking at first here.
Excellent.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
You bet. Go ahead, Jim.
So I'm not going to go through the non-capital projects unless council has some specific questions there. Before we get into that, I'm just going to go back to the managers that are on the line here, operations and the fire department. If I missed anything that you guys kind of wanted highlighted through this, or you know, missed anything, now's your chance. Anybody?
Yeah, Jim, I'll jump in if that's okay.
Sure.
Oh, too late, Chris. You waited too long.
Yeah, I'm not fast enough on the buttons there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank council for having a close look at all these things with us tonight. There have been a lot of changes in here, some adjustments to a lot of the projects in here as far as costing and that sort of thing. We did take a really hard look in the engineering department and all the other departments, inclusive of you know, what we were seeing in the marketplace, what we could do to alleviate some of these radical changes that we're seeing along the way coming up here in the next little while. And I'm really hoping that we've been able to set ourselves up for some good success on these projects in the future. So I really appreciate all the questions and comments on everything in the presentation so far.
All right, thanks for that, Chris. I think it goes without saying that, you know, anything, even though the budget is locked in, through the course of the year, if there are opportunities for productivity improvements or safety improvements or those kinds of things, speak up. You know, let's get these things done sooner than later. You know, we don't want to be making that many changes as we go through the year, but it's important to know that we've got the flexibility for you guys to be able to get the tools, put the tools in your hands that you need to get the job done.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're doing our best to try and capture everything on the first go, but certainly if we run into something, we'll be coming back to council and having those conversations.
Awesome.
Speaking of productivity improvements, from personal observation, with the addition of the project manager, Shane Castle, who's not on the line tonight, but I really think that's going to be a big benefit to that department when we talk about, like, Shane is, I think, one of the ones that did a lot of the legwork on updating costs, and you know, he's working on this wastewater treatment plant. I think he's going to be a great addition to that department and just the city in general. And he's going to be able to get done that the other fellows didn't have time to do.
Excellent.
Thanks to Cal for proving that one.
I would agree 100%, Jim. Thanks for bringing that up. You know, he did put a lot of effort into what we see here today. So thank him for that. And also thank all the managers for their input and all the work that goes into this. It's much appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, you had some questions on non-capital?
Yeah, on the non-capital, actually. Cool.
Yep.
For 2022. So I'm really, really pleased to see the Civic Center painting included next year. As the entire city is being upgraded, both from private interests as well as from us, things that, you know, were the eyesores before, as they get fixed, other things become the eyesores. And every time I drive by the Civic Center, it just looks tired. And I'm really, really pleased to see the painting for that in the budget for 2022. And the other item I want to point out is the speed reader signs. I assume these are the LED radar signs that tell you how fast you're going relative to what the speed limit is. So 18 grand, how many is that? What do these things cost each?
That I'll speak to that one. So that would be another 2 of those. So they're about 9,000 each.
They're about 9 a piece.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but these have really proven to be effective, the places that we put them. And, I would suggest that adding 2 more is awesome. But if we have other, troublesome spots around the city that speeding is an issue, at $9,000 a piece, it's really, really an inexpensive way to, help with our traffic on the road.
Yes, thank you. The data that we have gathered from these speed signs do indicate improvement overall in the average speed that we're seeing on these roads. So I would agree with those comments. And we can for sure look at some other problem areas and look to potentially adding some more of these in the future.
Yep, awesome. Thanks, Nick. That's it, Jim. Thank you.
Council, any other questions on the non-capital? Finish up. Okay, that's all I have. And
that's it.
That's it.
For capital and non-capital.
That's right. Operating to come. Just back to the resolution to include these projects in the 2022 to 26 5-year financial plan and to amend years 2 through 5 of the current plan, just so we can get on with some of this stuff.
All right, mover. Councillor Kiddo moves and Councillor Dallum seconds. Any further discussion?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. We do have a resolution on the table to receive the 2022.
Oh, thank you, Maurice. That was a while ago.
I know.
We'll call the question on receipt of the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks, Maurice.
Thank you.
Now forward to the next motion on the floor. Councillor Kiddo moves and Councillor Dallum seconds. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Anything else, Jim?
That's it. Just thanks for your focus and patience while we went through this thing.
But you had to work pretty hard for 15 seconds of approval there.
Yeah, that's part of the game.
All right, so that's it for this evening, Council.
Or is that looped into the last one?
Yeah, it's looped in. It's part of the last one, yeah. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Kiddo and Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are done. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jim. And thanks, staff. Really appreciate you guys sitting in tonight.
Kind of feels like one of those meetings.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Fun going through all that.
Guys, hang on. We're on YouTube.